Borno State is one of the most popular in northeast Nigeria. Coming from the backdrop of over a decade-long insurgency, the state has been able to reposition itself as a model of socio-economic prosperity, an example of hope in the face of adversity. Welcome to Borno Restoration. I'm Jessie Tafida. But first, let's bring you up to speed with Borno Today. The 2021 Global Terrorism Index indicates that Nigeria has advanced to 2 places from 4th position, which it occupied since 2017, to 6th position. This is as a result of the successes recorded in the fight against insurgency by the military and other security agencies. The coordinated military campaign has also resulted in mass surrender of over 35,000 Boko Haram and ISWAP fighters and their families. But these surrenders have generated a lot of anxiety from residents who are not convinced about the sincerity of the defectors. At this meeting are stakeholders and peace ambassadors for humanitarian aid. Their discussion is centered around better ways to reintegrate repentant insurgents.
We want the government to employ the best practices that is happening in other countries. The best practices is you don't only empower the perpetrator and they leave the victim. The international standard is 1 to 3. When you empower 1 repentant, you empower 3 members of the community, or you now rebuild community so that it will serve as a healing process, and even to ensure that there are proper way of how this thing should be done.
We believe that security, particularly with respect to the drug abuse challenge, is something that is a collective responsibility. Drug abuse and those that operate under the influence of drugs actually constitute a menace to good security in any environment.
The state government is of the view that the massive surrender is as a result of the non-kinetic approach adopted by the military.
It is a joint effort of everybody. The state alone cannot do it. And by the grace of God, and by the level we are, hopefully before the end of this year, you will not need escorts. By the grace of God, to visit any part of this state. Action speaks louder than voice.
The meeting suggests that for the protracted conflict to end and the process of post-conflict rebuilding to succeed, there has to be forgiveness for peace to thrive. It started with a march past from the NSCDC office. Finally, they arrived at the Borno Express car park. The theme of the 2022 Civil Defense Day is civil defense and management of displaced populations in the face of disasters and crises, role of volunteers, and the fight against the pandemic. It is an opportunity for the NSCDC personnel to register their affinity with members of the society by coming out to keep the environment clean.
The life of every living organism begins within the environment and ends within the environment. And we deem it necessary today to pay back to the environment that sustained us over the years. God's willing, we have lived all the time past and we've made success out of the environment. It is part of our corporate social responsibility, so to say, to plow back into the environment that made us tick. Today is a day that we have to show concern to the vulnerable and the disadvantaged communities.
And residents appreciate their presence and commend them for embarking on this exercise, pledging to always keep their environment clean.
Really, I'm very appreciative with the civil defense because we never expect them to come. And thank God they came and they did a successful sanitation for the terminus.
Because we don't know that this day is a special day to us. We really appreciate it, what they did, and we will keep the dates. By next year, we will embrace this initiative and we will continue with this.
But beyond environmental cleaning, the NSCDC's primary task of keeping crime at bay is up for discussion. They sensitize the public on the need to report any suspicious movement around them, as security is the duty of all. In course of the week, The global community commemorated the International Women's Day, and Borno State is not an exception. It has been raising the bar when it comes to women empowerment and opportunities to thrive in recent times. Let's take this report. Women, most often the biggest losers in every conflict the world has ever seen. They pay the steep price in the violation of their bodies, the loss of their children, the death of their husbands, and the extreme deprivations that are often the outcome of crisis. The paradox of the shining example of women in Borno State, northeast Nigeria, is that although the state has been in the throes of Boko Haram 12-year campaign of terror with the attendant humanitarian crisis, the violence by one of the world's deadliest terror groups has not deterred the government of Professor Babagana Zulum to swim against the tide and fetch women their due. It is why this year's International Day for Women is commemorated in Borno State with a grand style. Organized by the Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development, the program was a lead. All in their purple, women in Borno came out en masse to celebrate the day. The Commissioner of Women Affairs and Social Development, Zoe Ragambo, took time to enumerate efforts of government in uplifting the standards of women in the state.
As you can see, part of today's celebration is showcasing items produced by beneficiaries of government interventions in the last 3 years. And you could see that they are IDPs from the camps, they are survivors of gender-based violence, they are very indigent women from host communities. And so for us, the best that has happened is creating an enabling environment for these women to benefit from these interventions and to sustain such interventions by creating market facilities and accessibility for them. For instance, you can see a lot of them have made a lot of sales today because the VIPs bought most of the items, and Her Excellency has given us a lump sum of money to buy the items off them. And so this is the best encouragement that can ever be given to them. The mere fact that they are able to harness the resources that was given to them is a clear indication that they are indeed very serious about what they are doing. All they want is more support from the government. They are very organized. The Borno woman is known for her resilience. The Borno woman is known by taking the bull by the horn. And so we'll continue to make a push. In Borno, the VAP and Child Rights Act have been passed. We are happy about that. We also know that at one point His Excellency insisted that women councillors must be elected into offices in the local government areas. 2023 is around the corner. We are hoping that more women will be given the opportunity to get into elected offices. Borno State government has never left the women behind. As I told you, and I asked you to join us in calculating, we have had 48 landmark celebrations in the last 3 years. And each celebration is marked with economic empowerment. We have consistently built the capacities of our women in various fields. Is it education? Is it economic empowerment? Is it the health sector? So for the government, there is no bar, there's no ceiling or a bar that is stopping it from continuing to support the women. And today's showcasing, as I've told you, is a clear indication, clear example that the interventions are working, and we're only looking forward to more support from the government.
Wife of the state governor, Dr. Falmata Babagana Zulum, took time to appreciate the resilience of the Borno woman in standing tall against all odds.
The occasion is significant to all women in Borno State and Nigeria as a whole. I extend my most sincere and warmest congratulations to all women across the globe for witnessing yet another day set aside to commemorate the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women in the world. My sisters, there is no doubt that women's rights and gender equality have taken a center stage in 2022 celebration with the theme Gender Equality Today for a Sustainable Tomorrow. In order to achieve this, we are asked to break the bias. Imagine a gender equal world, a world free of bias, stereotypes and discrimination, a world that's diverse, equitable and inclusive, a world where difference is valued and celebrated. There can be no development without the full and equal participation of women in all spheres. And any country that continues to deliberately undermine the advancement of women is simply stifling its own advancement. We must therefore get involved by doing everything humanly possible to change the narrative for the better.
During the program, future women from 4C Climate Change Club of Carlin Private School gave a presentation on the gender perspective of climate change.
Many girls drop out of school to go look for water, fuel for cooking, and even food for the family. We are forced to get married early to reduce the burden of feeding the family. The change in climate is devastating on us.
Let's stand against littering the environment with substances such as polythene and other non-biodegradable materials. Our rivers should not be dump site for toxic waste. Let us discourage burning of fossil fuel and embrace renewable forms of energy. Let us explore the solar and wind form of generating electricity. Let us stop cutting down of trees. Let us plant trees. Let's go green.
Today is International Women's Day. 4C, my organization, have really been developing girls in schools to be agents of climate change in the future. We want to raise generation where we have young girls that are aware of the climate and are ready to take care of it. We teach them how to recycle waste bin, we teach them how to do climate smart agriculture and so many other things in their schools. Right now we need support so that we can expand the territory we are covering now. MMC and Nigeria has been our target, but we want to go further. Now that we have returnees back to their villages, Mongono, Baga, we want to go there and train these women in smart agriculture because they are the future. Without training women, we cannot have the sustainable women in the future. Women are the key to sustainability in the future. More funding for more girls' activities. We need more support from them because without training young girls and women, the future cannot be sustained.
The plight of the vulnerable groups has remained central to the administration of Professor Babagana Zulum, with numerous projects designed to uplift their standards of living, especially women and children, as well as victims of insurgency.
Yeah.
Now, let's bring you our interview with the Director General of the State Emergency Management Agency, Yabawa Kolo, of the activities of the state government in addressing the plight of vulnerable groups. Take a listen. Welcome to Borno Restoration, Ma. Humanitarian intervention has been central to Professor Babagana Zulum's 10 Pacts development agenda. How will you assess the situation so far as Borno is now enjoying relative peace?
When it comes to assessing the humanitarian intervention of the state governor, we rate that one almost 100%, if not more than that, because the rating stop, the bar is 100%. Because you see his passionate concern to see that, now we have about 3 categorization. We have the remaining IDPs in some of the camps that we are yet to close, very few, at about 4 camps officially. Then we have the returnees across the border, those that are coming from Minau camp in Cameroon and also in Boso from Niger Republic. And we also have the host community resettlement. So whichever case you are focusing on, you see that the governor is doing very well in terms of catering for their welfare and their well-being. So you can see he has already constituted a monitoring team comprising frontline MDS like MCRP, Ministry of Reconstruction, Resettlement and Rehabilitation, Ministry of Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs to see how the civil authority, the traditional institution and other symbol of authority, they are intact in the resettled community so that they will give a sense of belonging and also to build upon the resilience of the returnees, including other locally reintegration mechanisms and activities like social cohesion and peace building. Yes.
Now that some IDP camps have been closed, rehabilitation and resettlement is in top gear. Talk to us about the situation of the resettled IDPs.
The situation of the resettled IDPs, they are doing very well. Even before they go, some packages were given to them, and even before they go to the location identified, we have a lot of issues into consideration, especially the security, the safety of the returnees. And also we go through our checklist, which has different sectoral identification. For instance, when before we take the IDPs, there are a lot of activities that we conduct prior to the transportation or movement to the location. One very important one, we conduct a return intention survey. In the return intention survey, we sit down, we engage with them, sometimes according to different groups. Sometimes we engage the youth, sometimes we engage women, and sometimes the aged. As I told you, some of the aged, they are not willing to go back simply because they cannot trace their own original sort of chain of relationship, because during the displacement we have quite a number of separated aged persons and also the children, unaccompanied and separated children. For instance, now we've done with all the other camps. Before we go to Gubio, like 2 weeks back I was in Gubio to know the actual number of separated and unaccompanied children. So that when they go back to the settled community, they will not have issues. So these are some of the things. The education, those that are enrolled already into tertiary education, so going back, what happens to their education? So all these things we take into consideration, and when they go back, we also follow them to look at the critical sectors, the availability of the services, the availability of what we call secured environment, how secured is their return or resettled communities. So, so far so good. So all the resettled communities, we don't have even issues of attacks since they've gone. For instance, we even have overwhelming surge in influx of people coming from captivity to those resettled communities. For instance, even the Ajiri that you see as small village and headquarters of MAPA, we were able to go and profile some of the villagers that came out of captivity, where we profiled almost 500 households. In Burma alone, we have such category close to 65,000 households. So you can see that we have a relative peace in resettled and return community, and the services are okay. We are able to give them the services that they are requiring from us. And for the humanitarian agency like NEMA, SEMA, what usually we do, where agricultural produce, the harvest is not that sufficient, you see the governor himself sometimes leading distribution activities. We go to them very openly, very frequently, to see that they don't like anything. You know, it is not the population is so overwhelming, and the resources sometimes government alone cannot cover all the needs. The resources of government cannot cover all the needs, but government is trying very hard to see that we provide for them, and the complementarity from the partners is also excellent, because even some of the partners are also following up with their tools to resettle community, to do some basic profiling, to do some basic checking, especially whether we comply with the Kampala Convention and other UN guiding principles on return.
Okay. Now bring us up to speed the plan of SEMA this year vis-a-vis the state government resettlement drive and support to vulnerable people.
SEMA for 2022, you know, we've already developed our corporate plan. So we do things according to the corporate plan, because that document came out of as a result of the institutional strengthening, the needs gaps analysis of SEMA, and we are able to identify, even at that time, the document was developed around 2019. Even at that time, we were able to forecast that one day all these IDP camps will be closed. And when all these IDP camps were closed, so what happened to SEMA? So in the corporate plan and with the law, the reviewed one, that is 2017 SEMA law as amended, we were able to sit down and study the law carefully. And based on that law, we are able to develop the vision, mission, core values, and also other short, medium, and long-term plan for SEMA. And in all this document, especially the corporate plan, the centrality of strengthening the institution, that is the agency, were very clearly projected. And also in that line, we are able to train and build the capacity of the staff to understand that the agency commanded is to move out, or is to address, or especially situation of emergencies, either natural or man-made disaster, as soon as prompt as possible, very prompt, especially whatever happened, the different departments were able to strengthen their title, their nomenclature, what have you, to see that they can move into action promptly to save life. First is to save life. Then second is to give them relief and succor for victims or survivors of disaster, either human error or natural that is happening. So based on that, even in 2021 projection, 2021, both financial and activity plan program, capacity building is number one for the staff. You have to strengthen the capacity of the staff that they will be well equipped, especially in the area of search and rescue mission, in the area of providing relief services, in the area of conducting organized distributions of items and not bought items. Also in the areas, if possible, we want to strengthen that organization to have GIS, geographic information system in place, especially so that they can forecast. What is happening. It is very advanced technology, but it's part of our very ambitious plan.
Okay, now what sensitizing message do you have for the people of Borno State?
Now the season, especially fire outbreaks, is very rampant these days. So the message that I have for the people of the state is to educate, no matter how little, to sensitize the people around them, sort of safe cooking practices. You know, our traditional method of cooking is exposing a lot of risks towards fire disaster, because they cook very closely to that local makeshift emergency shelters that we have in the camps and some of the informal settlements in the host communities. So this is message.
Director General, State Emergency Management Agency, Abawa Kolo, thank you for your time on Borno Restoration.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Yes.
And that's our package on this episode of Borno Restoration. Thanks for watching. I'm Jessie Tafida. See you next time. Bye-bye.